Welcome to this introductory screencast for the Social Differentiation and Stratification section of the Component 3 Sociology exam. So Component 3 is the last of 3 written examinations that you do at the end of the second year, and it consists of 2 sections. There's one section that focuses on the World Sociology unit, and the other section that we're introducing in this screencast is called Social Differentiation and Stratification. Now, a key concern running throughout almost all sociological thinking, virtually every sociological topic, is the concept of social inequality. And this is very much the key concept that underpins the second year work that we're doing in preparation for the Component 3 exam. So world sociology is very much about social inequality at a global level, focusing particularly on social inequalities in developing countries, in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. Social differentiation and stratification, the other section of Component 3, is about exploring the nature of social inequalities that exist within our country, within the UK. So this important concept of social inequality refers to the uneven distribution of resources such as money and power, and also the opportunities that people have to live a good life in terms of having good education, good experiences of work and good health. And collectively, these opportunities to live a good life are often referred to in sociology as life chances. Now, as sociologists, we know that there are massive problems with talking about people living in a particular country, such as the United Kingdom, as if everybody in that country is pretty well similar to each other. We know that there are really important social divisions and social inequalities that exist within any country, and these might be related to things like social class, gender, ethnicity, and age. And a sociological perspective is very much about pointing to the unequal relationships between people in any given society. Now, a key aspect of inequality within the UK is the distribution of wealth and income. So wealth refers to the value of money that people own, and also other assets that people own that could easily be turned into money. And those other assets might include investments in things like stocks and shares, ownership of land, and particularly important in a UK context, the ownership of property, the ownership of houses. Income, on the other hand, refers to the amount of money that people are able to earn in a certain period. So for most people that will come primarily through the job that they do, but also some of the wealth assets that people own, things like stocks and shares and property, might also give people a regular source of income. And collectively, these aspects of social inequality are referred to as economic inequality. This pie chart shows the extent of income inequalities within the UK. So the richest fifth of the population, their share of national income is around about 40%. Whereas the bottom fifth, the poorest fifth of the population, their share of national income is only 8%. And when we compare the UK with other reasonably developed economies, we can see that the UK has quite an unequal income distribution compared to other countries. However, wealth inequalities are much, much bigger. So it's estimated that the richest 20% of the UK's population own about 60% of all of the wealth in the UK, whereas for the poorest 20%, their share of national wealth is under 1%, is actually only a little more than half. And it's interesting that this is much, much greater than people actually think is the case. So we can see here, this is what people think is the wealth distribution within the UK, and you can see that this is massively different to the actual wealth distribution within the UK. One of the reasons that wealth inequality is so much bigger than income inequality is that assets such as the price of property have been increasing at a much greater rate than income. If you look at wages, for example, they've stagnated for most ordinary workers over the last 30 or 40 years, whereas the price of assets such as houses has gone up at a much, much faster rate. Now, in sociology, it's important to look at inequality not simply from the perspective of individual people, but to look at how it can affect whole groups of people. And patterns of inequalities between social groups are called social stratification. The concept of stratification in sociology is based on two ideas. Firstly, there's this idea of social differentiation. This is the idea that we can categorize the population into different social groups. So it describes the way in which society is divided up into different groups based on characteristics such as social class, gender, age, and ethnicity. And it's through these group memberships that people will often distinguish themselves from other people within their society. The second idea that underpins this concept of stratification in sociology is the idea of social ranking. So this is the idea that the groups that exist within society often have different amounts of power and status and therefore form a social hierarchy. So this diagram shows that social class can often be the basis of social stratification within society, and stratification, as we can see in this diagram, refers to the way in which societies are divided up into different layers, or to use the technical term, these layers are known as different stratums. So the term stratification refers to a ranking system for the social groups that exist within society, and a really closely related concept is the concept of status. And status in this sense refers to the social honour or prestige accorded to a person or social group by other members of society. So your position within a stratification system, your position within the hierarchy will determine very often your social status. Now, some types of stratification systems are said to be open, and other types of stratification systems are said to be relatively closed. An open system is one in which it's possible to move from one social level, from one stratum to another. And this term social mobility is used to describe movement between the different layers that exist within a stratification system. A closed system is one in which your social position is relatively fixed, where it's difficult or impossible for people to move between the different levels. Examples of closed systems of stratification that are worth looking up would include the feudal system that was the stratification system in medieval Europe, and also this Hindu caste system that is associated with India. So within a caste system of stratification, your position, your social rank is assigned at birth. You remain at that particular level of society for your whole life. That means that your status is one that is ascribed rather than an achieved status, and endogamy refers to the fact that you're only allowed to marry people that occupy the same social rank that you do within that system. In modern Western capitalist societies, such as the UK, social class is one of the main stratification systems used. And social class refers to your economic status. It's based on things like your occupation, your income, your wealth. It's something that can change throughout your lifetime, and therefore to some extent it's an achieved rather than an ascribed social status. It's much more meritocratic than a closed stratification system based on caste. The main way in which we would measure how open or meritocratic a class system of stratification is to look at rates of social mobility, to look at how hard or easy it is for individuals to change their social rank within a class system. And when you compare different countries, we see huge variations in terms of how open their class systems are. So as this diagram shows, Western capitalist societies that have a smaller gap between the rich and the poor in terms of income inequality, you get much higher rates of social mobility compared to countries like the UK and the US that have much higher levels of income inequality. So those countries that have high levels of income inequality tend to have low rates of social mobility.